Jai Jai Shri Caitanya, Jai Nityananda. Jai Advaita Chandra, Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Jai Shri Caitanya, Jai Nityananda. Jai Advaita Chandra, Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Jai Shri Caitanya, Jai Nityananda. Jai Advaita Chandra, Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. And thank you to this young man who was just giving out the cushions. That's very nice. Serving the devotees. That's really, really very nice. So devotees and friends, here we are again with our Sunday program. And I just mentioned how we came from Santon, where just, an hour or two ago, we went through the whole chapter, basically, of Lord Caitanya and Ramananda Roy. Lord Caitanya meets, it's called Talks Between Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Roy. So we went through the whole thing in brief, but still we went through everything. And it's such an interesting subject that I thought we could go through the same thing, or part of it, just part of it today here, but in a little more depth. Because certain parts, there are two sections in their discussion. One is about Lord Caitanya asks Ramananda Roy that basically, please tell me what is the ultimate goal of life? That's a pretty serious question, and it's a very high-level question. And ultimately, the answer to the question is the relationship between Srimati Radharani and Lord Krishna, and different sort of details and intricacies of that. But, with respect, we are not on that level. I mean, Prabhupada's given us these things, so, he wanted us to read them and just get the basic idea. But, they're the first so many verses in the course of that discussion, they're very relevant to us in very practical ways. And so I thought we could look at those right now. So here we go, devotees. This is now the first verse where Lord Caitanya requests, or actually the way Srila Prabhupada has translated the verse, he says, Lord Caitanya ordered Ramananda Roy to do something or explain about the ultimate goal of life. So anyway, let's just read this verse. Prabhu kahe pada shloka sadyara nirnaya Raya kahe swadharmacha charane Vishnu bhakti haya. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ordered Ramananda Roy recite a verse from the revealed scriptures concerning the ultimate goal of life. So in this discussion, it's back and forth like this, and the Supreme Lord is questioning, and the devotee is answering. First point would be, we might be surprised that the context is like that, but we might think it's around the wrong way. That the devotee should be inquiring, please explain about the goal of life, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead should be explaining. But actually in this case, it's the other way around. And that's nice. That's nice in different ways. The first point there is that now Lord Caitanya, he's in his tour of South India. He went from Jagannath Puri down to South India. Jagannath Puri is sort of, what would you say, east. Sri Sri Nitai Gaura Hari Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri is kind of east central India, on the coast, but kind of central from north to west of India, something like that. But now he's gone right down into South India, which is, in many ways it's quite different from the central and northern parts of India. So just before Lord Caitanya, when Lord Caitanya informed one of his devotees in Jagannath Puri, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, that I'm going to South India shortly, then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he said, down in South India, there is this one devotee. His name is Ramananda Roy, and he is just a most exceptional and wonderful devotee. So you're going down there. Please meet him and get to know him and get into a discussion with him, because he knows so much about Krishna and Krishna consciousness. He's just like an ocean of knowledge and understanding about Lord Krishna and anything to do with him. So therefore, when Lord Caitanya was down there in South India, at some point at least, he went into the area where Ramananda Roy was based, and he met him, and they engaged in this discussion, which we're going to have a look at least part of it right now. Yeah. So therefore, Lord Caitanya, Lord Caitanya took himself to be a devotee. He thought of himself as a devotee, even though he's the Supreme Lord, and obviously it's not that he doesn't know he's the Supreme Lord at all, but he's really in the mood of being a devotee. And so oftentimes, if devotees who understood that he is actually the Supreme Lord and he's not exactly, so to speak, just a devotee, sometimes some of them would just raise this point, actually, you're the Supreme Lord, or start interacting with him as if he's the Supreme Lord. But Lord Caitanya would object, and sometimes he'd object strongly. But he would basically, practically always, he would object, because he took himself to be a devotee. So here, in this case, it can be seen like that. It can be seen like that. Lord Caitanya, he's feeling as a devotee, and he's very humble, and he's heard from very reliable source that this Ramananda Roy, who's a devotee also, but He's an extremely qualified devotee. So in that sense, we can take it that Lord Caitanya was very happy to question Ramananda Roy and get answers from him and really take them very seriously. On the other hand, a second perspective is that the Supreme Lord, he really likes to see his devotees glorified and appreciated because they are very glorious anyway, actually. But he prefers, oftentimes, he would rather see his devotee be glorified and appreciated than see himself being glorified and appreciated. So, in that mood, also it's possible to see this interaction. And it's really nice interaction. So, okay, let us then just enter into this right at the beginning, where Lord Caitanya has told him, has ordered him that, tell me what is the ultimate truth, what is the ultimate goal of life. That's an important question, isn't it? If you don't know what the goal of life is, sure, you could get yourself into a mess doing all sorts of things which are not the goal of life, and maybe they're sort of useless things too, waste of time things. So, okay, let me just read that again. Lord Caitanya ordered Ramananda Roy, recite a verse from the revealed scriptures concerning the ultimate goal of life. And Ramananda Roy replied, if one executes the prescribed duties of his social position, he awakens his original Krishna consciousness. And then each time Lord Caitanya puts a question to Ramananda Roy, Ramananda Roy gives an initial answer, but then he expands on it and sort of clarifies further. So what he said, let's just have a look again what he said. If one executes the prescribed duties of his social position, he awakens his original Krishna consciousness, awakens. So, in other words, it's really the beginning. It's not exactly the goal. You've got to start from the beginning and then work towards the goal later. So anyway, he says, you've got to execute the prescribed duties of your social position. What he's referring to is what is called varnashram. Varnashram, which somehow, I don't know really how it happened, but somehow or other in India, it's been well known for a long time. Even when Krishna was there 5,000 years ago, it was extremely well known, varnashram, as a sort of structure for human society of different categories of people. So later it became known as the caste system. Everyone's heard of the caste system. And the caste system has, for good reason actually, it has developed a bad name. And I read not long ago, maybe less than a month ago, I forget, but something like that, how in America, someplace in America, for caste distinctions to be made has become illegal. it's against the law in America to make distinctions between people in terms of caste. Yeah. In some part of America, in the other part, amongst Indian people, because some people who were supposedly from lower castes were being discriminated against at work in different ways, and just in various ways. Can you believe it? America, land of the free. Anyway, forget that. That's the first thing to forget about America. And there's a whole list of things you can forget about it. So the caste system, for good reason, has developed a bad name because, basically, in terms of like occupation or social situation, there are 4 what are actually called varnas, because the term for the whole system is varna ashram or varnashram. So there are 4 varnas: Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Sudra. Brahman means priestly, intellectual, teacher, that sort of person. Kshatriya means administrative or even warrior. And Vaishya means kind of like business class, business people, or agriculturalists like farmers who own farms and therefore they're producing produce. Not just those who like maybe drive the tractors or do something like that, but the actual owners. And then there's the Sudras, who are the laboring, working class basically, physical labor type of people. So what happened was that just on the basis of being born in one of these groupings, people, for the rest of their lives, they were identified as being members of that group. And, if it's one of the good groups, like particularly the Brahmin group, if you're born into that group, it was kind of advantageous. At least you'd be very respectable in society, and people, would stand back when you walked past, or, greet you very respectfully like that. But you might not be a priestly, intellectual teacher type of person. By nature, you might even be a laborer. I know in Vrindavan, having gone there many times over the years, I know one, would you believe, taxi driver. And his name is Panditji, which is a term, it's not really a name, but it's a term for someone who's a Brahmin. And literally what it means, Panditji, means someone who really knows scripture. That's a Pandit. He can tell you what scripture says about this or that and everything. But our Panditji is a taxi driver. Hare Krishna. Taxi driver, don't mind me saying it, is a sort of laborer's, working person's type of occupation. So old Panditji, once he drove us, a small group of us, in the taxi. He doesn't even own the taxi, he's just an employee of the taxi owners. He drove us from Vrindavan through Karoli to Jaipur. Karoli, we went there, it's a bit out of the way. We went there to have darshan of Madan Mohan, very special ancient deity. And then we had to come back across country to join the main road to Jaipur, which is big city. So we left, we had our darshan, we left Karoli and off we went, sort of on the country roads, and we came to like a Y junction, if you know what I mean. Not exactly a T, but You could either go left or right on an angle, off the straight road we'd been on. And there was a sign there in Hindi language only, because we're in the, sort of the remoter area. So in Hindi, there's a sign. To the left, there's a couple of names of a couple of towns, and to the right, there was a couple of names. And one of them was the name of the town where we should go to join the main highway. And it was Gangapur. And this was at least 20 years ago. And as fate would have it, I can read Hindi. Just one time I decided to teach myself just to read it. It just took a couple of days actually. It's not that difficult to recognize the alphabet. So there, okay, we pull up and he stops the car, Panditji. And I can see there's the sign, it says Gangapur. And there's Panditji is studying the sign. And I said, Panditji, ye rasta, means that road, ye rasta Panditji, to the right. Panditji didn't believe me because I was a foreigner. So Panditji, would you believe, got out of the car and asked some man who was walking by, some local. And I could hear him saying, Gangapur kaha hai, something like that. And the man showed him, yeah, you take that road. And Panditji got back in the car and off we went. And I understood. Panditji, he's a Bridge Basi, but he's illiterate. He couldn't read his own mother tongue, which, I tell you what, is not difficult. It's really not difficult. But here he is, he's Panditji. And when we got in the car in Vrindavan, I asked him, I said, oh, aap Brahman hai, means you're a Brahman. And he pulled out this thread, a Brahman thread, which was, as black as his hair. Maybe he got it, when he, years and years ago, and just didn't bother changing it. So this sort of situation, it's very sad. It's really sad. But he kind of expected to be taken seriously to some degree as a Brahmin. But he was, in terms of actual qualification, he was nowhere near being a Brahmin. He was just a laborer, a driver. Typical drivers, just a simple working person. But when the system is actually, as it was, say, in the time of Lord Caitanya or before, when it was actually being followed, then it was very good. People would be trained, for example, to become Brahmins or to become warriors. And then they would be recognized like that. And they would perform those duties specifically as services to Krishna. Not just for the sake of sort of occupational identity, but actually as services to Krishna. I am a Brahmin, and I do those things, I teach, etc., as a service to the Lord. So that's what Ramananda Roy is saying, that if you actually carry out whatever duty is yours according to that system as a service to the Lord, you will, in quite an easy way, awaken your original Krishna consciousness. In quite an easy way, because it's in terms of your natural inclinations. If you're just the type who likes to study and learn Brahminical activities, it just comes to you then how easy is it to do something which just comes to you naturally and you don't have to battle with, but to do it as a service to the Lord. Yeah. So therefore, if you do like that, this type of activity which just comes naturally to you, but you do it as a service to the Lord, then relatively easily your dormant Krishna consciousness is awakened. So that's what Ramananda Roy said in answer to that first question. The first question, of course, being basically, what is the ultimate goal of life? So, it's not a bad answer. And then when Ramananda Roy had said that, he gave a verse to sort of substantiate it. It's actually a verse from Vishnu Purana, which reads, Varnashrama charavata purushena parapuman vishnura rajate panta nanyata toshakaranam, which means the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, is worshipped by the proper execution of prescribed duties in the system of Varna and Ashram. And then it says, there is no other way to satisfy the Supreme Lord. One must be situated in the institution of the 4 Varnas and Ashrams. And just as a matter of interest, we apply that not like absolutely, but in a simple way, we apply that within the Krishna consciousness movement. We have here a householder Brahmin, you see. Dekhiye aap. There he is. A householder Brahmin. Nishingananda Prabhu. I think you all know him. And you know that, well, he's a householder. There's his good wife over there. But he's a Brahmin. He's not just someone who just works in the factory or something because he's a householder and he needs money. But he's a Brahmin. He's a teacher, most particularly, and a very good one. So, right. And we have here just in front of me 2 young men in saffron. They're brahmacharis. They're students. Celibate students. That's a classic Varnashram sort of identity. Yeah. So we apply it. It's not that we don't just sort of forget about it. We don't like stringently apply it absolutely under all circumstances. But in many ways we apply it. So, okay. In other words, it was quite a good answer. It wasn't a bad answer. Like, it wasn't just wrong. Yeah. But Lord Caitanya answered. He said, Prabhu kahe, eho bahya, age kaha ara. Can you understand that? It's very simple. Eho bahya. Bahya means outside. It's external. Age. I mean, if you know Hindi, you must understand age. Forward. Go. When you're on the rickshaw. Age. Yeah. This is external. You'd better tell me of some other means and take me further, he's saying. So it's external. Why is it external? It's external because it is specifically related to our bodily state. Yeah. It's not specifically related to our spiritual nature. We're all eternal spiritual beings. That's the first lesson of Bhagavad Gita. But Varnashram is related to our physical condition. Like Arjuna was a warrior, Kshatriya, warrior. And you just look at him and you know, he's a Kshatriya. Big, powerful man. And he was trained like that, and he lived like that, and he was identified like that. But it was according to his, you could say, psychophysical nature. But we are not our psychophysical nature. We are eternal spirit souls. So therefore, Lord Caitanya said it's external. It's to do with our material bodies. So let's go forward. And then Ramananda Roy said that higher stages offer the results of your activities to Krishna. Whatever you're doing in life, offer it to Krishna. So, which is not bad. It's pretty good actually, but it's definitely not bad. And then to substantiate that, Ramananda Roy speaks very famous verse actually from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 27. Yat karoshi, yad ajnasi, yad jahoshi dadasi yat. Yat tapasyasi konteya, tat kurushva mad arpanam. Which translates as, my dear son of Kunti, Krishna is speaking to Arjuna, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer in sacrifice, whatever you give in charity, whatever austerities you perform, all the results of such activities should be offered to me, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And how do you think Krishna reacts to that? You think Krishna says, right, you got it. He doesn't actually, he says, it's still somewhat external, It's not really what I'm looking for. So, how could that be? I mean, of course the verse, it's a famous verse, Prabhupada comments on it in Bhagavad Gita very clearly. It can be seen as part of pure devotional service. But it can also be seen as connected with karma yoga. Karma yoga means that these things you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer in sacrifice, give in charity, whatever austerities you do, the results of those things should be offered to the Lord. It's a little subtle. Some of you may not get it, but I think you should get it. He's actually saying that these are things you're just going to do anyway. Whatever you do, it's just whatever you do. Whatever you eat, whatever you eat, etc. The results of those activities should be offered to Krishna. Not that the activities themselves should be done as offerings to Krishna. This is the distinction between karma yoga and bhakti yoga. The essential, simple distinction that karma yoga means you just do those things anyway, because that's what you're into, one way or another. But then you take the result, and you offer the result. There, Krishna, take the result. And the way it's put sometimes is, because we have to live, we may not want to give all the result away. We may need to keep some to keep ourselves alive. So therefore in karma yoga, sometimes it's said like, okay, Krishna, you take 50% and I'll take 50%. Yeah, that's part of karma yoga. We may keep something back and offer the rest to Krishna. And sometimes, if we're doing very well, we may say, okay, Krishna, take 75%. Or maybe take all of it. But other times, if we're not doing well, we may say to Krishna, listen, I've got to keep it all now. I'll give some to you later when I'm doing better. I read a joke years ago, a religious joke. There are these priests. There was a Hindu priest, some Christian, and some other type. And they were running, one was running a church, the other was running a temple, the other was running a mosque. They're discussing, what do you do with the donations you receive? And the one man, I forget which one, but one man said, yeah, well, I just divided it up 50-50. For the institution, I give 50%, I keep 50. And another one said, yeah, I give 75, I'm doing better than you. I just keep 25% for me. And the other one said, oh, I'm doing much better than you, the two of you. You know what I do? I throw it all up in the air and I shout out, God, take whatever you want. And whatever lands on the ground means he doesn't want it, so I just keep that. If you get the idea. So anyway, so this is being here. Prabhupada in Bhagavad Gita really explains it in terms of being devotional service and not exactly karma yoga. But some of our acharyas do explain it definitely very much as being karma yoga, that you're going to do these things anyway, and the results are going to come, you give the result. Right, so therefore, guess how Lord Chaitanya responds. Eho bahya age kaha ara. Same response. That it's also external. Let's proceed further. So then, Ramananda Roy says, to give up one's occupational duties, these bodily designations, Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra, give those up. And the duties which come with them. To give up one's occupational duties in Varnashram is the essence of perfection. So, you know what? Ramananda Roy quotes a super duper famous verse. If there's any verse that any of you practicing devotees know, it's probably this one. If there's only one, it's probably this one. Sarva dharman parichaja mam ekam sharanam vraja aham tam sarva papebhyo mokshayashami mashuchaha. So the way Prabhupada translates it here, after giving up all kinds of religious and occupational duties, if you come to me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and take shelter, I will give you protection from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. It's somewhat different from the sort of classic translation in Bhagavad Gita, but that's the basic idea. So in other words, the point is to give up those duties. If you're a Brahmin, and means you're actually a Brahmin, you're a priest, you're a scholar, you're a teacher, but give it up. Give it up. And just take shelter of the Lord. And the Lord will take care of you. So, of course, the way Prabhupada explains it in Bhagavad Gita, and even the general sort of understanding is, you don't just give up all those things and then you're not doing anything. But you give all those things up, and you do basically what Krishna wants, or what the spiritual master wants, or the devotees want. And you do that, whatever it is, whether it's in keeping with your psychophysical nature, or it's got nothing to do with that at all, but you just do it because spiritual authority has ordered you. So Prabhupada, Lord Chaitanya, you know what he says? Take a guess. Eho bahya, age kaha ara. That's external. Now you might think that's pushing it a bit too far, because that's a pretty important verse. So, but the thing is, it doesn't specifically mention do devotional service. Specifically, what it says is, give up whatever else you are doing, take shelter of the Lord, and he'll protect you. So then, as usual, I'm very good at running out of time, actually. I'm expert at forgetting things because I'm getting older, but yeah, running out of time. Are we taking, is someone writing down or organizing questions, or is it just? No, we haven't done it, okay. All right, so let me just briefly then touch on what happens next. Next, Ramananda Roy says, devotional service mixed with empiric knowledge is the essence of perfection. This is an interesting, very interesting answer, and it's very relevant to us in a sense. Certainly devotional service. This is the first time Ramananda Roy said, do devotional service. So yeah, devotional service, which is the fundamental process for approaching the Lord. But mixed with empiric knowledge means knowledge, it basically means knowledge that we're all eternal spiritual persons. We are not these bodies. Aham brahmasmi. That's what it means. Now, if you've been involved in Krishna consciousness for a while, you'd know very well that Srila Prabhupada really pushed the idea that we're not these bodies. And repeatedly, he told us, we are not these bodies because we're not. And the problem is, we have such an ingrained tendency to think we are, that it's just an essential part of what's called sambandha gyan, like the initial knowledge for a beginning practitioner, that along with positively serving Krishna, you got to do this and do that, all positive things you got to do. There's certain things you've got to not do. And otherwise, if you forget that you must not do them, you will do them. Because it's just too ingrained. It's too ingrained. Therefore, Prabhupada repeatedly told us, you're not this body, you're not this body, you're not this body. What are you? You're not this body, right? Yeah. So Lord Chaitanya does not really accept it because he's looking for the ultimate goal. And the ultimate goal is not just to think, I'm not this body, I'm not this body. You got to be aware of that. If you're not aware of that in the early stages, you'll start thinking you are this body. And I am a devotee of Krishna who is this body. Yeah. I am a male devotee of Krishna. I am a white devotee of Krishna. Or I'm an Indian devotee of Krishna. And that's what you'll think. And you'll rarely, rarely, rarely think that. So it kind of has to be beaten into our, don't mind me saying it, sometimes slightly thick heads. It has to. Yeah. Until we really get it, which takes a while. So, therefore, Ramananda Roy is suggesting it. Devotional service mixed with empiric knowledge is the essence of perfection, he says. For a beginner, it has to be done. But when one is not any longer just a beginner, then you put that aside. That then is not part of the equation, so to speak, of who you are and how you think. So anyway, Lord Caitanya, what does Lord Caitanya say? Prabhu kahe, take a wild guess. Eho bahya, age kaha ara. Let's go forward. And Ramananda Roy answers, Jnana shunya means that knowledge of how we're not these bodies, shunya means zero. We give it up. Jnana shunya bhakti. Sajyasar. So Ramananda Roy says, pure devotional service without any touch of, well, he says, speculative knowledge is the essence of perfection. And devotees, you know what Lord Caitanya says? He actually says, Eho haya means that's all right. Lord Caitanya accepts this, that it's okay. It's not bad. The other things, not really. But this is all right. But age kaha ara, please go forward. And so then Ramananda Roy gives an answer which Lord Caitanya gets excited about to some degree. Ecstatic love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the essence of perfection. Actually, what he's translating is prema bhakti, sarva sadyasar, ecstatic love. And when Lord Caitanya hears that, when Lord Caitanya says that, he says, yeah, that's okay. He's accepting. So we should understand. We should understand from this that we should be, or we must actually, we need to work on cultivating pure devotional service. We should be working on it. We do not expect that we will just pure devotional service, there we are. Because we're coming to Krishna consciousness from impure backgrounds. All of us. You know, even if you're coming from a nice Hindu background, you're coming from a somewhat contaminated background. It's not as contaminated as some other backgrounds, but it's still contaminated. You know, by well, when I first went to India, that was 1976, I asked a number of people, what percentage of the population is vegetarian? And generally I was told 80%, around 80%. In 1976. Later, you know, even recently, I asked again, and it was around the other way. 80% of the population are meat eaters, and just 20% are vegetarian. Yeah. And I remember when I was preaching in England in the 70s, I was working with Gujarati people a lot. And they were all vegetarian. Every single last one of them. They were all from either Uganda or Kenya. And they were sub-log. They were vegetarian all the way. And many of them were vegetarian and no onions and no garlic. Many of them, really a lot. But now a lot of the young Gujaratis, Hare Krishna anyway, take a wild guess. A lot of them, they are non-veg. Because it's Kali Yuga. It's Kali Yuga. So we should, as aspiring devotees, we should understand, first thing we should understand is we're trying to cultivate pure devotional service, not some mixed up form of devotional service. And in order to do that, I'm late, aren't I? Or she's early. Anyway. In order to do that, you know what the first step is? Or the first two steps? It's a two-step in the beginning. Step one. Shri Shri Nitai Gora Hari Ki Jai. Shri Shri Nitai Sachi Sutta Ki Jai. I will stop within 5 minutes. Is that okay? Something like that. So we should start by chanting 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra on our beads. And if we haven't reached that point, we should, step by step, come to that point of chanting 16 rounds on our beads. This is massively important, or otherwise you could just say essential. And then the second thing is to follow the regulative principles. No meat, fish, or eggs, or onions, or garlic. And I honestly cannot understand how people like to eat garlic. I'm really being totally honest. It's horrific. I mean, honestly, it is horrific. It is beyond just being, not so nice. It's way beyond that. It's shocking. It's absolutely shocking. Sorry if you're a garlic fan. So anyway, yeah. Meat, fish, eggs, onions, garlic. No intoxication, including tea and coffee. I can tell you a funny little story. When I joined our movement in London, and I was there for 7 years in the 70s, and I was a lot of the time distributing our literature on the streets in central London, right in the very center, on the main street, Oxford Street. And devotees and friends, don't mind me saying it, but the police would arrest us. They would arrest us. So I got arrested many times. I should have kept count. I'm sure it was not less than 50 times, and probably, at least 75. In other words, you are looking at a criminal. And so we'd have to report, and they let us go. We'd have to report in at the court the next day, right in the center, the heart of London. And we'd have to go round the back, and they have holding cells where you have to wait until they call you into the court. And they'd usually fine us £5. It was kind of like the standard thing. So in there, you get all these, troubled people, shall we say, like hardcore criminals. You just get so many of them. And on the walls were little stickers and little posters from, like Alcoholics Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, all these such and such Anonymous. And there was, in one of the cells, because I know all of them quite well, there was Tea Drinkers Anonymous. No kidding. Because it's an addiction. It's addictive. It's not as addictive as, many other things, but it is actually addictive, and that's why we don't drink it. Yeah, and it's one of the reasons we don't drink it. So anyway, meat, fish, no meat eating, etc., no intoxication, no illicit sex life, no gambling. If you really want to sort of take it seriously and get into it and move in the direction of pure devotional service, which the Lord will be happy to accept. He won't just say, yeah, not too bad. He'll say, good, and he'll accept you. So this is what you should do. Chant and come up to 16 rounds a day and follow the regulative principles. Yeah, first 2 steps. I mean, there's more also. Come to the programs, associate, get some service, read the books. But these are the first 2 steps if you want to cultivate pure devotional service. Okay, here we got 3 questions, devotees and friends. Just give us a few minutes. So how can we protect our devotees in the Varnashram system and also train up newcomers to continue nicely in this system? Well, when I was talking about it, as I got to the end, I think, of talking about this system, I said, we do not follow it like absolutely. We don't. It's not just like you have to do all these things as they were done hundreds of years ago. But certainly certain things we adopt wholeheartedly. Like for the brahmacharis, 1, 2 brahmacharis here, they're celibate and they have to be celibate. If they decide they don't want to be celibate any longer, Hare Krishna, thank you, then they cannot continue as brahmacharis wearing saffron. Then they have to, well, it depends, but basically, generally, they should become householders. Not go and find a girlfriend, but become married properly, nicely in Krishna consciousness, with a Krishna conscious suitable partner, like that. So there's certain things which, they're strict. They're very strict. That's one of them. Or like for a householder, 1 wife. That's it. 1 wife. End of story. Yeah. Prabhupada frowned on divorce. I mean, in certain cases he allowed it when the young man and young woman, somehow they had made the just like totally wrong choices about who to marry, which I think it's not difficult to make such wrong choices. So he'd allow divorce, but it wasn't just like, yeah, okay, you want a divorce, go for it. At all. If you're going to marry someone, it's a serious commitment, a real commitment like that. Yeah. So, anyway, I tell you what, the question begins, how can we protect our devotees in the Varnashram system? Really the first step for protecting them in the Varnashram system, or just in general in Krishna consciousness, is to really encourage them or help them to chant 16 rounds a day and really do it properly, attentively, as Prabhupada wanted it done, and really encourage them like that. And then like those duties in Varnashram, I just mentioned a couple. For the celibate students to be serious about being celibate students, and for those who are married to be serious that I'm married to this person, that's my situation. But the strength to do that without your mind going off into other regions of meditation, the first thing you need to do is really chant Hare Krishna attentively. That'll give you a lot of spiritual strength. So let's see, in our current state, is it? Something like that. Status as householders, people of the world, how do we make spiritual progress? How do we go forward? Well, I've already spoken about it, the chanting, then following the principles, associating with the devotees, getting some service to do, reading the literatures. If you do like this, then you can be a householder, and, like we have a householder Brahmin here, but not so many householders are really Brahmins. If they are working like just in a regular job, then, their status as Brahmins is probably kind of mixed or something along those lines. So, okay, that's all right. If you're a householder, you have to provide for your family. You can't just say, well, listen, I'm a devotee. I'm not going to go and work wherever to earn money. So, yeah. So if you're in that situation, you're working in an office, in a shop, in a factory, or maybe you have a business of your own, there's some sort of situation like that where you are regularly, like on a daily basis, you're involved in the process of earning. Yeah. Then if you do the same things, oh, thank you, chant and associate with the devotees, etc., then you'll make progress. Srila Prabhupada was in the pharmaceutical business for quite some years. Yeah. I mean, at heart, he was a great preacher, and he would preach as much as he could, but he worked selling pharmaceutical products for quite some years, maybe 20 years or something like that, because he had a family. But his heart was really into preaching. Last one, devotees. Please explain about the protection that the Lord gives the devotee. That's a good one. Is it absolute for all devotees, or does it depend on the level of surrender of the devotee? Yes, well, first point, it varies from devotee to devotee. Level of surrender, you could say, yes, is definitely a factor, but the basic point is sincerity, the level of sincerity, which kind of is reflected in the level of surrender anyway. Yes, so for the devotee who's really trying their best, because what is your best and somebody else's best is very likely to be different. But if it's actually your best, then it's your best, and that's it. and you can't really do more than your best. So if a devotee, Krishna responds to the devotees, you can't exactly say, like mechanically, that Krishna responds to this degree or that degree. But oftentimes there's a relationship between the level of sincerity and the degree of protection. And not just protection, but even help and intervention in one's life, adjusting certain things in one's life. But protection, if we talk about protection, the thing is, what do we need to be protected from? Generally speaking, not always, but generally, we don't need to be protected from like physical violence. I've been practicing a bit more than 50 years. Only one time I got kind of physically attacked, but not exactly. I definitely never got like really physically attacked. So it may be sometimes devotees do get physically attacked, it happens. Of course, there's disease also. We need to be protected. But the first line of defense is against disease? Get a good doctor. And you can pray to the Lord too. But I remember in our temple in Chatsworth, quite a few years ago, one elderly man approached me, Indian man. He said, Swami, I got headache, Swami. You must pray for me, Swami. This is Chatsworth speak. You must pray for me, Swami. And so I told him, listen, I get headaches sometimes. But you know what I do when I get a headache? I take a Disprin. That's what I told him. Which is true, actually. Yeah. So Krishna, sometimes Krishna protects his devotee by putting the devotee into difficulty. So the devotee learns, I must pray more from the heart. Because that's, you've got to learn that. So he may put you in a situation which is just like, wow, what's happening? Yeah, and you realize it's sort of beyond my control. And then you can learn, I must pray more and pray better. So, it's sort of a subtle subject in many ways. But, again, the chanting, if you really do your best to chant nicely, and if you really do your best, not just do your best, but if you actually follow the regulative principles nicely, then Krishna will protect you from sort of like the fundamental problems of the attack of the mind, the attractions to worldliness and all that sort of thing, deeply ingrained. Old habits die hard. So he'll give you that protection. Yeah, and you'll be happy in Krishna consciousness. Yeah, even though these things sort of tend to be around here and there on the mental level, but you'll get a lot of protection from them. And generally, you won't get into a situation where it seems you're getting overwhelmed by them. If you're getting overwhelmed by them, usually it means you're not really taking shelter, you're not really applying yourself sufficiently. So there we go. That was only 5 minutes. Okay, anyway, thank you for listening very patiently. Hare Krishna.